else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to this Louie T Network exclusive. NFL draft market is on fire right now. It's crazy. We just saw a pretty big trade take place between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Rams. The City Chiefs feel like a lot of trades happen because of being broke. Your cap situation is not ideal. You're seeing teams scrambling right now to get under the cap. The Cowboys just restructured the deals of a couple players, one of their offensive linemen and Dak Prescott. They're still looking to do CeeDee Lamb. They just restructured, freed up $47 million, and it only got them like $5 million under the cap. They were in cap hell. And all restructuring does is put you in a tough spot the following year, right? Or down the road. You're just kicking the can down the road. It's a tough place to be. You never want to be restructuring deals because it puts you in a financial bind down the road. But when you find yourself in these positions, it then forces you to make decisions that you wouldn't otherwise make, i.e. the Minnesota Vikings putting Jonathan Greenard on the trading block. They don't want to trade him. They just don't have any money. They're trying to get under the cap and they're scrambling themselves right now. So there's so many players potentially available. Let's talk about what's already happened. Let's talk about some guys that are available and what the likelihood of these players being traded actually is. So let's start with what kicked all of this off, which was Germaine Johnson getting traded from the New York Jets to the Tennessee Titans. In case you forgot, this one was from Jordan Schultz about, I'd say, a week ago, right before the combine kicked off. The New York Jets finalized the trade, sending Germaine Johnson to the Tennessee Titans for defensive tackle T'Vondre Sweat. This is significant because, as I mentioned before, and I know you guys saw the report today. If you haven't, the Titans are very smitten by Jeremiah Love, and the Titans hold the 4th pick in the draft. I ultimately think that's where he's going to land. And the reason you trade for Jermaine Johnson is to put yourself in a position where you don't need one of the draft's top edge rushers. You now have one. So now it gives you the space to be able to go out and draft a Jeremiah Love. Had they not done this, their angle would have probably been go get Kenneth Walker III in free agency, spend a bunch of money at running back, which they've already done before. Not a bunch of money when they went out and signed Tony Pollard, but it would be something similar to that, where you go out in free agency, you spend some money, go get you a back, and then they would have taken one of the best rushers in the draft class, whether it's a David Bailey or an Arvell Reese or, or even a Reuben Bain. Now they don't have to do that, right? Now they have a Jermaine Johnson. Now they can draft the running back and feel really good about what they've done. So that was the first trade to kind of kick all of these trades off. Then we had the trade with David Montgomery. Remember, at the end of the season, Lions head coach Dan Campbell pretty much lamented the fact that they just weren't getting David Montgomery enough opportunities and that, quote, he needed to go somewhere or be somewhere where he could play more. They understood the assignment in Detroit. We got one of the best, if not the best back in football in Jahmyr Gibbs. And so we got to play him as much as possible. And David Montgomery, unfortunately, was the odd man out of that equation. And so you knew he was getting traded. And I didn't think they would release him. But that was a possibility. But they wanted to, find him a good home. He had done right by the organization. They wanted to do right by him. And so they ship him off to Houston, which is a team that, they had their own situation with, Joe Mixon last year with him being hurt and not playing a single game for the Texans a season ago. So he goes to Houston, gives them another thumper there. They had Nick Chubb, I think Montgomery's going to take that role and expand it. You know, Nick Chubb didn't get the football a ton. They had a rookie there in Woody Marks who played well. I think you're going to see another 1-2 punch at the running back position that David Montgomery will be a part of with Woody Marks. But Montgomery goes to Houston. In exchange, the Lions get a 4th-round pick in this year's draft, Juice Scruggs, an offensive lineman from the Texans, and a 7th-round pick in next year's draft in 2027. So that was another trade that we saw. Felt like that trade was going to happen. We just didn't know when and where he was going to end up, he being David Montgomery. But this one here, I did not see coming, and this was a blockbuster here. So I talked about the Rams' biggest deficiency being their secondary. They currently have 4 cornerbacks that are up for free agency, with the most intriguing one being Jacoby Durant. By looks here, Jacoby Durant probably won't be back in LA because they replaced him with one of the best, if not the best, nickel. But really, Trent McDuffie was playing a whole lot of boundary corner for the Chiefs last year, and even the year before that. I've always felt like he was the best nickel in football, but they needed him out wide, so he went outside. He can play inside. He can play outside. They played a ton of man in Kansas City, and he held up. Trent McDuffie is like that. He is at the end of his rookie contract, essentially. He's got 1 year left. They picked up his 5th-year option, so I think it's 13 and some change million that he's fully guaranteed in this final year of his rookie contract. So the Rams, if they want, can let that expire, then give him the extension after next season, or this season rather, coming up. Or they could just tear it up, give him a new contract, or they could extend him right now and add to the deal that he currently is under. So the prevailing thought is you trade what the Chiefs or the Rams just traded to get Trent McDuffie, which is a 1st-round pick in this year's draft, their 1st-round pick. Remember, the Rams have 2 1st-round picks, or had 2 1st-round picks, because most people see the Rams involved in a trade in which they give up their 1st-round pick and they think, oh, the F them picks Rams are back. Not exactly. If you recall, last year in the draft, the Rams traded out of the 1st round, allowed the Falcons to come back into the 1st round so that they could select the Tennessee edge rusher. How did that work out for Atlanta? Really good in the season, not so good in the offseason. Nonetheless, they picked up a 2nd 1st-round pick in this year's draft. And so they traded their 1st-round pick to the Chiefs, the 29th overall, but they still have the Falcons' 13th overall pick in the draft. So they're sitting pretty right now, are the Rams, in terms of a draft pick. They still have a 1st-round pick. They traded a 5th, a 6th, and a 2027 3rd. That's probably the most valuable pick that they gave away, assuming that that draft class is as loaded as everyone says it is. Of course, a 1st-round pick this year is really nice, but the 27 3rd-round pick could be very valuable to the Chiefs. Also, keep in mind for the Chiefs here, they only had 6 draft picks going into this draft. So they were hurting for draft picks. Also, the Chiefs are hurting from a cap standpoint, which is why they traded Trent McDuffie. One thing I can say about the Chiefs and their general manager, Brett Veach, is that they do not re-sign secondary members for whatever reason. Maybe it's too expensive for them. They want to spend their money elsewhere. They've done this for years, it feels like. Remember, they traded L'Jarius Sneed instead of paying him. Once upon a time, they traded what was the name of the cornerback? Oh, man. Matter of fact, they traded him to the Rams. Now that I think about it, I think he called him the thief. They called him the Kansas City Thief. Marcus Peters. They traded Marcus Peters to the Rams, as a matter of fact, now that I think about it. Marcus Peters. They traded L'Jarius Sneed to the Titans. Now they trade Trent McDuffie to the Rams again. They didn't re-sign any of their safeties when they became free agents, when it was time for them. They're about to allow one of their corners, I'm assuming, to walk in Jalen Watson in free agency. Not going to re-sign him, it doesn't feel like. There doesn't look like they're going to re-sign their safety, Brian Cook. They didn't re-sign the safety that they drafted out of UVA that ended up signing with the Browns in free agency. That's their move, right? They don't re-sign secondary members very often, if at all, it feels like. And so they pick up a boatload of picks here, 3 this year. So they take what was 6 picks in the 26 draft, turn it into 9, including adding an additional second-round pick or additional first-round pick to the one that they already have. This probably feels more like at home for them, picking 29th. They are not accustomed to picking where they're picking this year. Chiefs, this is the highest pick they've had since, I don't know, 20. This is the last time they didn't win the division, 2015 maybe? 2016? I mean, when's the last time the Chiefs didn't win the AFC West? Obviously until this year. So this 29th pick probably feels like home for them. This is more like it. This is where they're normally selecting. So they got 2 first-rounders, and they add a 5th, a 6th, and now they have a 27 third-round pick as well. So that's a big deal for the Rams because that was the missing piece for them, right? Adding a guy that has all-pro type of talent in Trent McDuffie to the position that group that was probably the weakest on their team. They can get after the quarterback. They have really good linebacker play. Now they have a guy in the secondary that can anchor that group. They've had some really good safety play over the years. And one thing about the Rams is that they've done a tremendous job of drafting in days 2 and 3. So even if they didn't have an additional first-round pick, which they do, or so they still have a first-round pick, even though they just traded one to the Chiefs, they've done such a remarkable job of drafting guys in the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th and the 6th and the 7th that they find a way to continue to stockpile talent, even though they may not have the earliest draft picks. So Les Snead rolling the dice, looking to see if he can bolster this defense even further and give them a chance to do the thing that they did the last time they won the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is at SoFi Stadium in 2027. So after the 26th season, in 2027, February 2027, Super Bowl 61 will be at SoFi Stadium. That's where the Super Bowl was after the 2021 season in February of 2022, when the Rams won the Super Bowl and Matthew Stafford captured his one and only Super Bowl title. So they're hoping to repeat history again, play at home, and win the Super Bowl. See if they can get that done. This is a big trade to help them take a step in that direction. And so, again, that's, I think, a sign of things to come. There could potentially be more blockbuster deals. Let's talk about some guys that could be available. I already talked about Jonathan Greenard. The Vikings have basically said, we don't want to trade him, but we're broke. So if someone's interested and you're willing to give us, proper compensation, Jonathan Greenard could be yours. They've already cut 2 players to free up some cap space already. And so they're making the moves that they need to make to get themselves cap compliant. Greenard could be a casualty of that as well. We'll see. That's a guy that is a double-digit sack getter in this league, in a league where it is hard to find guys that can consistently bag the quarterback. Jonathan Greenard has had back-to-back double-digit sack seasons. If you need a pass rusher and you're in a position to give up some draft capital like the Rams were, They had 2 first-round picks. They could come up off one of them and still be in a position to help their roster with cheap young labor. If you're in a position with multiple picks, Jonathan Greenard could be yours if you're willing to give up and pay the price that it costs to go out and acquire a legitimate top-flight NFL edge rusher. A.J. Brown. Let's talk about A.J. Brown. Arthur Juan Brown has been on the block basically the entire offseason, all winter long. The Eagles really don't want to trade him. It's becoming very apparent that they don't really want to trade him. They are exploring trading him, but they don't really want to. They know how important A.J. Brown is to their success. If they were to trade him, they get weaker as a football team. Now, you could go with the whole, addition by subtraction methodology of if we trade him, now we don't have the headache of A.J. Brown complaining about not getting the football, et cetera, et cetera. But the Eagles would significantly decrease their star power and their offensive firepower on offense if they were to trade A.J. Brown. Even if you were to acquire another receiver, I doubt he comes in and has the immediate impact of an A.J. Brown. So they understand what A.J. Brown is worth. They're asking, and we've heard rumors that their asking price is ridiculous. Teams have laughed at them. 2 first-round picks and a player. We've heard that. We've heard a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a player, which is also laughable. Remember, A.J. Brown, I think, was traded for a first-round pick, if I'm not mistaken, from Tennessee. I'd have to look up the specifics of that trade, but it's something to the effect of they gave the Titans their first-round pick that year. I think it might have even been a second-round pick. I believe it was a first-round pick for A.J. Brown. He's what, 4 years older now? And at that time, he was looking for a contract. He's under a contract that makes him one of the highest paid wide receivers in the league. All of this, and the Eagles are still asking for an astronomical amount for A.J. Brown. They don't want to trade him. That's basically what they're saying. They want to rob someone blind in order to move on from A.J. Brown. So it sounds like A.J. Brown is going to remain a Philadelphia Eagle unless someone becomes extremely desperate, which is what Howie Roseman is preying on, right? He's preying on someone's desperation leading to A.J. Brown being traded, but I don't feel like that's going to take place. A guy that I do think is ultimately going to be traded is Maxx Crosby. The Raiders don't want to trade him either, right? They have tried to figure out a way to make Maxx Crosby feel more comfortable with the current situation. Crosby's tired of losing. He's tired of change. He's tired of starting over every other year, it feels like, in Vegas. He just wants some stability. He wants to win. And then that situation at the end of the season last year where he wanted to finish out the season on the field with his teammates. Instead, they cut his season short. I think they did the right thing. They weren't going to, win anything. They were also fighting for the #1 overall pick, which I know pissed Crosby off because he doesn't give a shit about the #1 overall pick. If you're drafting a quarterback #1 overall, it means 1, we suck, and 2, it probably means we're nowhere close to where I want to be as a player, and I don't want to be a part of a program that's trying to lose games actively. So our whole way of viewing what we're after doesn't align, and so Crosby's at a crossroads with this Raiders organization. Sounds like he wants out. Sounds like they don't want to trade him, but they understand that that may be the best move for them. They're asking for quite a bit for him. The asking price is 2 first-round picks. Again, I don't see anybody forking that over. So they really don't like A.J. Brown and the Eagles. Eagles really don't want to trade him if that's the asking price, a first and a second and a player, or even a first and a second is still too high for A.J. Brown you add in a player as well, it's crazy. Maxx Crosby, 2 first-round picks and a player, that's crazy as well. Even if it's just 2 first-round picks, that's insane. Even though he's a really good player, that's a price you pay for a Myles Garrett, a guy that has won Defensive Player of the Year multiple times, a guy that just set the NFL single season sack record. Yeah, you pay that price for him if he's available. Maxx Crosby, while he's a hell of a football player, what's the most sacks Maxx Crosby? And you can't always measure impact on sacks. We talk about this, especially with Maxx Crosby in particular, all the time, because he's so disruptive in the run game. He's so disruptive to the pass game. Even when he doesn't record a sack, he got pressure on the play and the quarterback barely got rid of the football. He's so disruptive. He blows up games. I've seen him single-handedly take over games and not record a single sack in the game. So you can't always measure that, a guy's importance or impact on the game by statistical data. But Maxx Crosby isn't, to me, worth 2 first-round picks and a player as well. He's really good. He's really, really good. Here's a name that I think a lot of people have forgotten about. But there was smoke during the season and even heading into the trade deadline surrounding Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. After the emergence of Washington, the receiver last year, who was spectacular. Man, was he so good. Parker Washington was outstanding for Jacksonville last year. They have already come out and said that Travis Hunter is going to really focus on the offensive side of the football, which I said from the jump, it's not going to work, okay? In order to maximize a guy with his skill set, we've seen it done in the league before. Like, you're not going to come in here and reinvent the wheel. You want to play both sides of the football? Fine. The way to do it is to be, to me, a corner that can have a package or two on offense. If you just want him to focus on one side of the football, put him on offense. Put him on offense. And that is what the Jaguars sound like they're going to do. If that is in fact the case, you have Parker Washington. You have Travis Hunter. I would assume that they'll be looking to add to the receiver position, but you may be able to move on from Brian Thomas Jr. So this was in an ESPN article recently written, kind of making predictions for the offseason, looking at free agency and whatnot. And it reads, the Jaguars will trade wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. Remember, there was speculation that he was on the block during the trade deadline, and the Jaguars just didn't receive any offers that tickled their fancy necessarily. Also, they were in the midst of trying to win something, and he was a part of that at the time. But now that you're in the offseason and you can replace him with another receiver in the draft, I could see them parting ways with Brian Thomas Jr. for the right price. They're not going to give him away, but I think you can get him for a first-round pick. If you have a first-round pick, if you're a team like how the Rams had 2 first-round picks, you need a receiver. If you offer Jacksonville the first-round pick, Brian Thomas Jr. is yours. I wonder if you could get him for like a combination of 2 2s, a 2 this year, a 3 next year, and a player or something of that ilk. Could you put together a package that would satisfy Jacksonville, or are they just simply looking for a first-round pick, right? During the free agency period, wide receiver cornerback Travis Hunter is being leaned on more heavily offensively than defensively in 2026. Will push coach Liam Cohen to prioritize receivers who better fit his system. And quarterback Trevor Lawrence's trust in Parker Washington and high leverage moments last season could lead to Jacksonville reshaping the room and recovering draft capital lost in last year's trade up for Hunter. So I could see this taking place. I would not rule out Brian Thomas Jr. being traded this offseason or during the draft is when it would probably happen. Most times when receivers get traded in the NFL, big receiver trades, if you just think back, Hollywood Brown was traded on draft day in the first round from the Ravens to the Cardinals for a first-round pick. A.J. Brown was traded from the Tennessee Titans to the Philadelphia Eagles, I believe, for a first-round pick. So when you think about big wide receiver trades, generally speaking, they happen on draft day. So if I am to believe that Brian Thomas Jr. is available, I would watch him in the Jacksonville Jaguars, for that matter, on draft day. The first 2 days, I don't think a day 3 trade is going to suffice. Day 2 trade, I've just talked about maybe putting a package together of a second this year and a third next year, or a second this year and a second next year, something along those lines. Maybe you throw in a player if that needs to happen. Another guy that I would keep an eye on, and I know Dallas is hell-bent on keeping him, but I also know that they're not opposed to trading George Pickens Jr. if the right deal were to come about. You know, Jerry and company think they're the smartest guys in the room. And if they can convince themselves that, hey, we traded a third for this guy, and now a team is calling us offering a first-round pick for George Pickens, we just flipped this guy and, moved up 2 rounds. I could see Dallas, entertaining the thought of trading George Pickens, especially if the number that Pickens is hinting at wanting is way above where Dallas is willing to go. I could see the Cowboys looking to move George Pickens. So maybe even a second might get it done. Who knows? But don't rule out George Pickens being traded from Dallas this offseason either. I don't think he's going anywhere, but you can't rule it out just because of the nature of how the Cowboys do business. They're having issues negotiating with their place kicker. Their cap situation is in hell right now. They're currently getting themselves out of cap hell by restructuring the deals of Dak Prescott and got the name of the offensive lineman, the left guard that they basically paid last offseason or 2 off seasons ago. So they're restructuring those deals. They still have plans on restructuring CeeDee Lamb's deal, and that will free up even more money. But all that's doing is putting them in cap hell in the future, whether that's next year or 2028. They're going to be in a tough spot yet again, and having to, play musical chairs again with the salary cap. But this whole trade market in the offseason is very fascinating because there are quite a few players available. We'll see if anybody's willing to pay the price. The Rams clearly were willing to pay the price to get Trent McDuffie. Didn't even know he was available, but they paid the price. Big deal there. Give up 4 picks, including a first this year, a third next year, and a 5th and 6th this year for the services of Trent McDuffie to come over and anchor that Rams secondary that was really the weak spot of that Rams football team, specifically the cornerback position. The safeties were actually really good, but the corners were not. So it's a big deal for them. We'll see what other teams decide to do, because to me, not only is the trade market fascinating, free agency is going to be wild this year. A lot of teams with a ton of money. Cap went up $21 million, $21.2 million to be exact. So the cap is up over $300 million for teams to go out and spend. If you've been very fiscally smart and financially responsible, right, you should have a bunch of cap space to blow this offseason. And there's a number of guys that you can go out and blow that cap space on, to be honest with you. So it's going to be really fun. I'm fascinated with all the quarterback movement that we're going to see. Tua is probably going to get released. We already know Kyler Murray is going to be released. Kirk Cousins is going to be released. You have a big free agent quarterback that teams are salivating over, and Malik Willis. Is Aaron Rodgers coming back? I presume he will come back. Kyler Murray can be had for a song because he's going to be paid $36.8 million this year. by the Arizona Cardinals. So you can basically sign him. It's very similar to the Russell Wilson situation we saw after Denver released him. He was being paid all that money so he could go sign basically a league vet minimum with the Steelers. Same thing's going to apply to Kyler Murray. So now he can pretty much pick wherever he wants to go. It feels like Minnesota is going to be that team. That would be pretty fun to watch him go out there, team up with Justin Jefferson and all of the talent and Jordan Addison that they have out there. So going to be really fascinating to see where all of these quarterbacks end up. What happens to Justin Fields? Haven't heard his name mentioned at all this offseason. What's going to become of him and his situation? Geno Smith, is he going to be moved on from? Are they going to be traded? Is he going to be released? What happens there? What are the Falcons going to do with Michael Penix Jr. in terms of, are they looking to replace him? Are they going to allow him to mend? Same could be said for the Vikings with J.J. McCarthy. Doesn't feel like they're willing to wait on J.J. McCarthy, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy either. So are they going to just move on from him? Are they going to give him a chance to compete this offseason? Don't know. The transition tag was used on Daniel Jones, meaning Alec Pierce is one step closer to getting to free agency. Will he make it to free agency, or will they get a deal done with him before that happens? So many different storylines. Trey Hendrickson finally allowed to hit free agency. Will he stay in the AFC? Will he come to the NFC? There's rumors swirling around Dallas that they may sign him. Tampa Bay's name has surfaced as a team that is very interested in him. Will Mike Evans return to Tampa Bay, right? So many questions, not a ton of answers right now. This is what makes this time of the year so much fun. We're going to talk about all these things and more as the offseason continues to progress. But I got one comment and then we'll get out of here. So this is from Video Channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Lou, Video Channel, need more segments where you just talk league moves. I know. I got to get my podcast. Like I said, I got to get my tower back up and running so I can finish, putting my podcast back together so that I can have the ability to do that, because I enjoy that so much. I enjoy talking about the entire league. You guys know that. So I'm going to just, worst case scenario, I'll keep doing these types of videos. I got another one coming, live stream, where I'm going to be talking about free agency, previewing the entire landscape of free agency, talking about the quarterbacks like I just did, talking about all of the guys that weren't tagged that have a chance to hit free agency, talk about some big names that I think are going to get the bag thrown at them, and talk about, some of these guys that are going to have a chance to, maybe get one more final payday, i.e. a Khalil Mack or a Von Miller, somebody, Joey Bosa, still looking to play somewhere in 2026 after having a pretty solid 2025. So, yeah, I'm going to start trying to do more of these. I was trying to wait for me to get my tower fixed and, get the podcast back up and running, but that's not happening fast enough. So I'm going to have to just do these right here. And I'm comfortable doing this if I have to, right? So Mr. HTTR, thank you for being a member for 38 months. Salute, who writes, just going to sit back with my yak and watch the fireworks. They're coming. They are coming. So, yeah, enjoy. It's going to be fun. Enjoy the show. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on this Louie T Network exclusive, talking about the NFL trade market. Big trade going down with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs trading away their star cornerback, Trent McDuffie, in exchange for 4 picks, including a 2026 first-round pick, a 5th-round pick this year, in addition to a 6th-rounder this year, and a 3rd-rounder in next year's draft, to the Rams, of all teams, who were literally 1 or 2 plays away from the Super Bowl this year themselves. Rams got better. Chiefs got some cap relief as they now move on from the $13 million salary that Trent McDuffie would have been guaranteed, and he was going to be looking for a new deal. And they pick up picks. They only had 6 going into the draft, now increasing that number to 9 picks, adding 3 more and an additional pick in next year's draft as well. So look out. More trades could be on the horizon. I'll keep you posted when these things hit. I'm going to start being a little bit more active myself, talking about them. And until next time, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. You guys have a good one. Take care. Peace.